right, welcome back. So we're going to look at the just overall the MPC ecosystem. We're going to go through predominantly some sounds in the MPC as well. But let me just give you a little bit of backstory if you're new to the channel, because I haven't posted it in a long time since the actual beta release of the software of the release. So I just want to, I want to address really the users that like invested into this MPC and the likelihood that you may have been someone such as myself, where you've been involved in synthesis and instruments from back in even as far back as the 80s. So you're a hardware person at heart, and so a lot of the sounds and a lot of your creativity and inspiration really is driven from those times when like the D50 came out, the DX7, the K5, K5000, all that stuff. And I mean, I'm just telling you, that era, there was nothing like it. So if you were had an opportunity to be involved in the music back when the studio sessions and all that, while we're better off now in terms of the technology, back then it was a whole different perspective that so those of you that go way back. And so one of the things that I had, that this newer equipment has really afforded me the opportunity to build the studio of my dreams. I used to have all the hardware, so you pretty much name it, I had most of that hardware, with the exception of like the DX1, the CS80, the CS15, and like I didn't have the MKS 70. Some of the older pieces I didn't have, but the majority, especially when it comes to like the digital stuff, I had most of that, if not all. Okay, so what I've done is taking. So I'm just gonna go. We're just gonna go look at this like this. Maybe I'll just open up a new project. What you're hearing are sounds that are only coming from inside the MPC, and they are not the Fabric XL. They're not a Hype. They're not any of those plugins. These are only sounds that came from my library of hardware that I had resampled and turned it into expansions. So if I go into here, I'm just going to open up a new project. We're going to start vanilla with nothing. Okay, so one of the keys, or probably like most of you, when I got the MPCX in 2017, going into 18, I bought this with the intentions of having like an alternative way of working. I already had an established workflow, and I had lots of hardware, and had, like most people, had lots of plugins as well. And it got to the point where the MPC, the original MPCX, was so cool, but I still had the same issues, which was MIDIing everything up, getting the projects archived, getting that audio from the MIDI instruments into the MPC. It was actually almost next to impossible, to the point where you didn't want to use it, even though it was really cool. So let's just fast forward to 2022, just prior to that 2.10 update of MPC. I remember having to go out and take my MPC, or I had actually MPC Live 2 at that time as well. And I said, you know what, I'm going to bring a couple modules out, hook them to the back, and then the only thing I couldn't get were good drum sounds, like acoustic drum sounds. So what I did is I'm going to pull up an original. So these expansion packs, which I'll get to in a minute. So what I did, this is one of the original sounds I made in 2022. Pretty much started it all. I said, if I can just learn how to sample in this thing, just make a folder with samples in a program, not an expansion pack, I could at least have the drum sounds from my software library along with, let's say, a phantom rack. So here was one of my first kits. So that was like back then it was like really, really phenomenal. I had 2 or 3 different kits, and I remember posting it on YouTube. This is before I even knew how to make an expansion pack. And I thought I was in complete heaven. I could have my modules, and I could have, a couple highly sampled drum kits. That quickly changed to starting to do like a certain Roland sound that I might have liked. So let's just pull up. So Swimming EPs was from the JV, or not the JV, the XV5080 family of synths. And I was like, wow, I didn't have to have my module. And not only that, you know how when you use a module in what they call like patch mode, those older modules, as soon as you wanted to run another sound from that same module, you had to run it in multi. And then back then, the effects were not as liberal as maybe perhaps they are now. So I would be able to just go into the MPC, and I would be able to pull another sound that would normally have come from the module. And now I have 2 sounds in here. Swing EPs. And this came from the Roland Phantom. The Phantom, in particular, was the Phantom S or the Phantom X. So I would have 2 sounds now, and then I would program the effects so that they would sound really close, or the way I want them to sound, so that they would load up. And then I would have maybe 2 or 3 folders of some of the sounds I enjoyed or wanted to use the most. And then that would eventually expand into learning how to make an expansion pack. And then from there, as I started making more sounds, I would find myself using the hardware far less. And then it got to the point where I just kept on adding and adding. And something really actually happened that was big. 2 things, actually. One, I found that only the sounds that I would actually use were coming up. So therefore, I was filtering out, I'm going to say a really large percent, maybe about 85 to 90% of what I would use out of all those hardware pieces that I had, they were gone. Like I never had to use them. All right? And so it was more efficient. So let's just take this. So out of these samples, I was able to take different articulations. Hear that? That's not even part of the original patch. I was able to customize and make these the way I wanted. Before you know it. So let's go into here and turn the metronome on. We'll say play and record. Play plus record. All right. And before you knew it, the sounds the whole part became more fluid. And then the actual experience in using it, you ended up filtering out all the resistance that you get that we're all used to, because this is how we've done things in the past. And you can see that I can get a sound, and I'll make another video with the actual the tour of the actual sounds. But let's just go into here. This is a sound I used to use in Logic. It was from the EXS24 from the original Logic Pro 7. And I finally resampled it. And what was cool, if you can imagine, this used to live inside of Logic. What if I wanted to layer the sound with the sound from, let's say, the XD5080? Well, then, if you remember, you'd have to go and MIDI up the 5080, patch it into the mixer, and go into your DAW and create a MIDI track plus an audio track, and then create a track stack with this Logic sound. Well, now, let's go into here to this pack called Total Synth Rack, and I'm going to go into the lead synths. We'll look at it like this. So I'm going to turn on the previews just for now, which I created so you can hear what you're getting into. So Dirty Voltage. And so now creating a track stack is nothing more than just going to pick here, turning it on. And I'll get into the MPC-X versus the MPC Live versus the MPC-1 versus the Keys 3761, and maybe even the Force. So here's a stack that would be very difficult to achieve. Now this all lives inside the MPC. And here's the cool thing. Once this is all in, you can bounce these all out as stems if you want. So now that the song is in here, the MIDI and all because your sounds are already internalized in here, all you have to do is just bounce it out as stems in standalone, or you can do it in control mode on the MPC. Again, check this out. So this is that drum kit. So we'll do Deluxe Fat. And I'm just going to load it directly over the sample, the drum kit that was already in here. And then you can add or do a stack. There's all sorts of things that you can do in here. But the idea is once you get your sounds in here and organized, and I'll go through another tour of these expansions. They have been evolving over the past 3 years, and we're sort of at our final, real close, but to its like final incarnation. But another cool thing about this is that you can make the sounds the way you want. So these guitars, you can't get this in any module. And you really technically can't get this in any software. So you can customize your sounds. So if you go into humbuckers, so hear that feedback? And again, these are all using processing within the MPC itself. Here's the amp simulator that I used. So the idea is that you can turn all the effects off or change all the effects in any of these sounds. So, but these expansion packs are basically have finally gotten whittled down to 6 really big expansions, all sort of having a certain emphasis on certain things. So our synth would be obviously like Roland style sounds. Drums would be all drums. Kit pieces. So kit pieces from the Roland R8. Electronic drums. These are all different profiles here. So if I go into the Ensoniq, the Novation, Korg Maha is sort of a combination of a little bit of Yamaha and Korg. The good old T series. And then the FM stuff. So this would be an example of some of that stuff we like from the FM stuff. Okay. And then Dyno times E-Bass 1. But then you get, what I did is I took all the real big stacked sounds. put them into here, and then again with acoustic pianos. And we'll go through all this on a subsequent video. So like in the case of like New York City Grand, for example, this is more of an acoustic. Metal Grand. And so what ends up happening is the way I approach all this is I use the expansion packs almost 100% of the time. If I need something within the MPC ecosystem, if I gotta have something that I just absolutely can't get, and again, like I said, look at, you got the Phantom JDs, the Jupiters, LA Synth. If I have to, I'll go into like the Fabric XL, and I never had to go into Fabric XL, never had to go into Hype. I have it all in here. I've got the Mini D, I've got the Juro plugin, and the proof is in the pudding. I've never had to go into these programs, those plugins. So this is what's cool. Here's a stack from the D50 and the Metal Grand. I'm going to tell you there's a fault in the, so in the Air Instruments piano and so forth, and they're cool, don't get me wrong, and in all the hardware there's a certain thing that they don't capture that you can fix in sampling. So for example, if you take an acoustic guitar, okay, so I'm on, I used 4 or 5 different samples when making this guitar so that I could get the right articulation. So here are the releases I put in. And so, Urban Brazil, another sort of a incarnation of multiple. And sort of more of a bended guitar with Brazil for Brazil. nylon babies. So you can kind of get the gist that if you're so inclined to do sampling, you could really make this like your custom car or your custom house. And that's basically what I did with this. And then now with the MPC 3.0 software, you have the opportunity to use this in control mode if you need to, and have it, pretty close parity in terms of standalone versus control mode. Of course, control mode is going to allow you to take advantage of the RAM and the processing power of your computer. So you're talking about 512 notes of polyphony or even more when you're in control mode. More RAM, more audio tracks. And so what we're really waiting on is MPC, as far as the beta software, and the MPC Gold Master of the standalone software to gain some of these other features, such as like intelligent time signature switching, which is mapping, which Akai's already informed us that they're working on, and so forth. So we're just kind of keeping our fingers crossed. But this is just a really, like I said, just a random, very quick video for those of you specifically that have kind of gone back to the old times, and we got this new MPC and we just don't know how to fit this in. The answer for me was to go all the way. And if you go back to my older videos, you'll see that I've had in my studio tours tons of synths. And in the studio context, especially for composing and arranging, this is really the way to go. So until next time, everyone, peace out.